Thank you so much. It's an honor to receive this inaugural award. Very appreciative. So sorry that I couldn't be there. We're actually in Brisbane right now doing workshops both for applicants yesterday, and today we're working with other funders on tightening program evaluation. So all good fun, but apologies I can't be with you all in Sydney right now. So the Ian Potter Foundation is in the midst of transitioning to strategic grant making to ensure consistent, effective strategic philanthropy. So at its core, this approach is simply about trying to ensure our funding has greater sustained impact that benefits as many Australians as possible. Measuring the social impact of grants helps recipient organizations to understand and communicate the social and economic value of their work. Measuring and reporting outcomes helps drive funding and increases competitiveness in the market. With effective shared measurements, organizations can benchmark themselves. To put it more simply, if our grantees look good, we look good. It also means we can continue to make informed choices. By making informed choices, we aim to fund programs and organizations that produce positive outcomes. Supporting social impact measures has the twofold benefit of assisting recipients to be as effective and efficient as possible by having clear strategies, by measuring outcomes, reflecting on processes, as well as assisting the Ian Potter Foundation to be a strategic and proactive grant maker, targeting programs and organizations that are making a real difference. So what are we doing? As part of a grant, as impact enhancement, and as standalone grants. So integrated into a part of a project. For example, we funded Think Impact to undertake social impact measurements with the Les Twentyman's Inspire Me to Embrace program, or the Cape York Institute to hire a part-time internal evaluator to gather data about their outcomes. Secondly, impact enhancement grants. Now these are over and above the original grant. For example, for Carina Shelter to contract a local Tasmanian evaluator to calculate the cost effectiveness of its program, or for the Museum of Contemporary Art to use culture counts to show arts outcomes measurements from its family weekend. Also for Anglicare to measure its Teach Our program. Standalone. That's the third area we've been working on. And standalone support is for large, rigorous evaluations, multi-year projects, such as the randomized controlled trial evaluation of the Right at Hope program run by ERACI, CCCH at MCRI, and TRESI, and also the randomized controlled trial of cost benefit of the Children's Protection Society Child and Family Center, and that's run via UniMelb School of Economics and MCRI. So we support through funding, but how else do we support grantees? The second way is via workshops. We conduct welcome workshops after each board meeting. We review grantees' KPIs and plan for measuring outcomes and evaluating impact. We also hold subject-specific workshops. Disability employment we did in November 2016, medical research in February 2017, where we convene academic experts, grantees, staff, and governors to discuss best practice outcomes measurement in the field. In the third instance, the Research Evaluation Manager, that's myself, undertakes face-to-face or Skype meetings with all grantees who have received a grant for over $100,000. That's been 86 grantees so far from 2015 to the present. We discuss project evaluation, dissemination strategies at the outset of the grant. This includes discussing things like suicide data collection for RAW in Tasmania, measuring parent bonding with Kids Thrive, helping source valid, reliable survey questions for upcyclers and the Rolling X site, gathering baseline data from Kids Own, drafting evaluation plans with YSAS, using G-Power software to assess sample size with Wheelchair Sports New South Wales, and proofreading draft evaluations. That's been about 15. But this one-to-one hands-on, not quite tutoring, but walking alongside and together means that we're growing as an organization in learning about best practices from the grantees doing it well, but also we can share and disseminate and check people, and we recognize the patterns of where grantees are needing assistance and create resources, including a pool of high-quality evaluators. Every year we receive applications, we screen them, we rank them based on the criteria of their abilities in outcomes evaluations, financial analysis, and their experience with government, and we disseminate that list so that our grantees know who's good in the field. The other things we do is have examples of evaluation documents, such as requests for tender. We acknowledge the value of grantee experience and compile and disseminate grantee learnings as well. And these are gathered from the final report. So when you answer that question, what did you learn? It's not just going on a shelf somewhere in our office, but actually going out to as many people as possible so that we can all collectively become wiser about the processes of evaluation, dissemination, and even running a grant. We facilitate grantee conversations, such as allowing New South Wales YWCA to share its use of results-based accountability with other grantees, like Common Ground in Brisbane. Just saying, hey, you've done this really well. Would you mind having a chat to explain to these other grantees how you've done the process? Lastly, we share our own insights on measurement and evaluation at sector meetings. So at the QMIR and SIMNA event, we've paneled at the Bush Heritage Workshop on Marathi and on roundtables at Portland House. So quite a bit of activity going on. We're still learning, and I'll be the first to admit it's an inaugural award, so I feel a bit nervous about accepting it, but I understand we're in the nascent stage right now in Australia of looking at how foundations can foster and create cultures of evaluation, both within ourselves, but also within the wider non-for-profit sector. It's important, and even if we're stumbling along the way, and I'll admit we make mistakes, at least we're learning, reflecting on it, and pushing for this idea. And I'm very excited, so many people at this conference also doing the same thing. I enjoyed last year's conference, which I attended. My apologies that I am not at this one. Again, pre-booked workshops in Brisbane. So what have we been doing? How are we learning from these mistakes? Well, over the past 2 years, we've been back entering historical grant outcomes from the last 5 years, actually from January 1st, 2010. So this has involved reading evaluation reports, ringing grantees, and coding outcomes. Actually picking up the phone and saying, how'd the grant go? Can you let me know? From 1,023 grants now, these resultant learnings have led us to focus and narrow our guidelines, focus our giving so it's more effective. We've refined the guidelines in 7 of the 9 program areas. I've just recently finished the arts review, so we'll see where that heads in the future. And the results have been rewarding. Fewer declined application and higher quality proposals. Time will tell the value of the long-term outcomes. That's how we hold ourselves accountable. For example, we narrowed our science guidelines to encourage more fellowships after an analysis saw that these fellowships had particularly strong outputs and outcomes. Similarly, we narrowed our disability guidelines to focus on employment once we saw that employment-related grants had far stronger outcomes than those focusing on mobility aids, for example. So we focused on one specific area, just employment within the broader sector of support for disability. In medical research, we used our database to graph the percent of total grants funded by Ian Potter Foundation against the achievement of outputs and outcomes. The results were clear. More collaboration equals stronger outputs and outcomes. Our medical research guidelines now encourage applicants to have collaborative partners. Across all areas, we saw stronger outcomes in larger, over 100,000 multi-year grants. In short, as a result of this evaluative review process, we're in the midst of a transition to build on past successes to ensure consistent, effective, strategic philanthropy. We also use the information to influence interactions with grantees. For instance, we entered the location of all our projects in Tableau Public, and the results clearly showed that our environment funding in Victoria and Western Australia was higher than our efforts in the Northern Territory. The board has since sent out our program manager on a scoping trip to Darwin to meet with the Northern Territory-based organizations. In other words, we're seeing where things aren't going so well and trying to fix it by improving our systems and processes. On a final note, we aim to promote impact measurement across the philanthropic sector by sharing our methods and our learnings and our mistakes. To this end, we've led sector meetings, convened the Philanthropy Evaluation and Data Analytics meeting, which has now become a PA Funders subgroup. We've held masterclasses with Philanthropy Australia and with APS, spoken at conferences like the Generosity Forum, written articles for Generosity and Alliance magazines, and held individual tutoring sessions with other funders, and hosted a Victorian-based government funder roundtable on outcomes measurement. So much to do, and so much more to do. So looking forward to working more with all of you and across the sector as we grow in making sure that we are doing the best possible things that we can do for Australians, for all Australians across the nonprofit sector by picking programs, activities, and organizations that are maximizing the outcomes, the positive outcomes that they have, and for that long-term impact. The only way we can do it is by measuring and just starting getting in there. Thank you again, and thank you for the award.